November 2 to Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, and we have officially switched out co-host this hour.
I got the camera working. We are up and live. Well, actually, we're live on the Facebooks, but the YouTube videos is up. Your software updates, they're not the best.
I know. It's fun to figure that out, right, when you get here at 8:02.
But I'm excited. Our first hour was phenomenal. I still need to go check out that bakery, eat some Vegemite, some emu.
So let me tell you, our guest was so cute. And you know what? We have already, I know, Aaron, you donated a little bit. Reg, our last guest, she donated a little bit. And again, we're matching everything. And what I didn't mention last hour is we actually can accept your card, your credit or debit card, for anything you want to help with Selena, anything $5 or more on a card.
She was so inspiring. I was very inspired by her. And she gave me a book. I told her I got a chance to meet her on the break and told her that I got my last 3 dogs through fostering and through adoption with my husband, and she was so sweet, gave me a book, and I just was so inspired.
I know.
And I can learn from her.
I know.
Did you hear all her talk about financials? I'm like, man, I could learn something from this girl.
At 13 years old.
It's amazing.
So we're so happy to support her. I know we'll help her reach her goal. But again, we take cards, and I'm pleased to say we've already raised like $150.
That's awesome.
So and maybe more, because I can't see all the stuff that's coming in on our number. So the 813-377-2775. We'll check that when we're off the air. But if you want to support Miss Selena and her quest to bring a financial literacy program to her middle school, she would love to do that her last year and leave it behind.
What were those old-timey television shows where you get a bunch of celebrities on the phones collecting donations, and there's a variety hour going on?
Is it a telethon?
A telethon.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're a telethon all of a sudden.
We're a telethon.
That's awesome.
Listen, how could I...
We need phones. We need phones well, we actually have phones everywhere.
How could I not...
Put some ring sounds in the background.
This was her email. So she sent her email to me, like in a nutshell. She just says, hey, my name is Selena. I'm 13. My dad won a book off your show, Everyday Millionaires. And
that's a great book.
Yeah, I wanted to introduce myself. I began my work when I was... she's giving me all this.
She
and I'm
sounds
thinking,
like an adult.
How
it's
could I
so
not?
impressive.
I don't think a 13-year-old wrote this.
She's 13 now.
One,
Yes, that was
two,
her, the
three,
girl that was just
four.
here.
Actually, it's a 5-paragraph essay. It's probably about 1,250 words.
I'm a lawyer, and I don't write emails that long. That's amazing.
So it's really, really incredible. I know Mr. Adam Talley's on his way back in as well, and it'll be a delightful hour with Adam to chat all about some of the insurance stuff we're going to talk about. And we are really honored to have Aaron Dunavant back on Tampa Home Talk. And is it Dennehy and Murray?
Yes. So in January, I joined Dennehy and Murray. We're downtown Tampa is where our mothership is, but we have satellite offices all over the state, and we specialize in property damage insurance claims. So probably a far cry from the excitement of last hour where we had someone with a cool Australian accent and an inspiring little girl.
I love
here's stuff you need
Here's
to know.
the thing. Today's officially the first day of summer.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So with that being said, hurricane season is right around the corner.
Hurricane season already started.
Yeah, exactly.
I love this hour. It's Aaron
It's
and Leo
true.
versus Adam.
It's not me versus
Absolutely,
him versus
Leo.
you
This is
guys.
Crossfire. This is Crossfire. You're listening to
I
Katrina Madewell.
represent my clients, right? So
I represent your clients as well.
I know. There you
And
go.
I do too.
There we go.
When something goes
Hey,
wrong.
wait a minute. Before we go any further, now that Adam is back, are you aware that Adam received a big award this week?
I saw, was that Rotary?
Yeah.
So talk about that, because I did see it and I meant to mention it. We were so excited
Thank
talking
you.
to
Yeah,
Selena.
yeah. So I'm in the Ybor City Rotary Club, and on Wednesday I won the Rotarian of the Year.
Was that a perfect attendance award or no?
No,
Okay.
it's a little more than perfect attendance. So I'm on the board for the Ybor City Rotary Club, and I've helped out with, tried to help out with all the events that we do and that kind of stuff. And I was honored. I was surprised, really, because I don't know if I'm the most deserving, but it was. It was great.
What makes them choose someone for an award?
Oh, that's a great question. So the person that gave me the award was our current president, or outgoing president, as it may be, because we do our calendar year is July 1 to June 30th. So he's on the way out, so that's part of like his parting thing as he hands out the Rotarian of the Year. I don't know what his criteria was, but I'm really happy that I met it. So it was awesome.
That's so exciting. Well, I mean, you've obviously done some good work with them, or they wouldn't have recognized you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we got a lot of big things to come. So we've had a really great year, and we do a lot to give back to Ybor City and the
Yes.
community of Tampa in general, and looking forward to growing upon that.
Get out and do something in your community, whether you can support them financially or with time or volunteer work. Support them in some way or another. Make a difference.
Absolutely.
Leave that little impact.
And congrats. That's
Oh,
awesome.
thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, it's a great
definitely,
award.
definitely. And Pat, thank you for reminding me, because I did see that and I meant to mention it. If I don't write it on my outline, it goes pew.
And
Anyway,
you didn't write this outline. This outline was written. This is
was
presented
written by our guest.
by a
yes.
lawyer.
Yeah.
This was prepared. This is a legal
Logical,
document.
I'm
makes
going to review
sense.
this.
Oh, no pressure.
This is a
I
legal
know,
document.
right? Well, so here, Aaron and I were talking, and first of all, we're honored to have you guys as partners for Tampa Home Talk. And we don't endorse or support anybody that we would not hire personally. So when I say that, I mean it. And Aaron, Leo, you know that because we've had other inspectors, that supported us in Tampa Home Talk that we had to actually let go because we feel like they missed some major defects they shouldn't have. And it wasn't on one occasion, it was more than one occasion. So we really always want to look out for the best interests of our clients. It's really important to us. And I would feel 100% confident if I referred someone to you. I know that you would take amazing care of them. And there's so many things that we don't know when it comes to actually making an insurance claim.
It's very, very difficult, both before, during, and after the claim.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that people don't realize when they make a claim is, did I do everything I was supposed to do before I made the claim?
Yeah.
Did I apply for my insurance properly?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing that
So-
I know, you can speak of.
Let's spend
Adam.
some time on that,
So-
Adam, because I think, and I see this, and so I'm just going to speak, and I'm not involved in the conversation when you take the
Right.
app from the client, but I think that process goes so quickly that easily something could be missed. So talk
Absolutely.
a little bit more detail what she's talking about with regard to the application on the insurance. This could be your existing insurance that you already have in place.
So the most important part of, and this is how I usually do everything. If I'm writing a new business policy, we've kind of gone through it together. So what I like to do is make sure that I go through all the coverages with them, explain to them what they have and what they don't have. And then the most important thing to me is asking the underwriting questions, because if you don't ask them, you're not going to get the
Absolutely.
answers that you want. And, I think her very first thing on here says, make sure there's no misrepresentations in your application. Well, if you're not asking the questions, if you haven't been asked the questions, you need to read the application that you're given.
Yes.
You should do that anyways,
Yes.
but, there's a reason they're asking those questions. And, it's because they could have grounds to deny you if you
So-
did misrep. Now, I do have a question for you
Sure.
on the applications. How do you guys see it on your end with the introduction to DocuSign and that kind of stuff, where we're in a more digital age where it's not that wet signature necessarily anymore? Does that change anything, or?
It just depends. I have not seen it quite yet come to, the policies that I have. Usually they're still either signed or submitted by the agent. But it will be interesting to see what the court says about that, because we don't know if that means the client or insured actually saw it, if it's electronically signed. So you raise a very interesting issue that I haven't seen come down the pike yet, but I anticipate it will.
Well,
I do think they're going to be bound by it,
Well,
because
here's
it's
the-
going
here's
to
the
say
thing.
this
Yeah.
is your electronic
Well,
signature.
and that's why you
Well,
have,
but here's the thing. We
detail
use
page
the
afterwards.
electronic digital signing, and we can pull the back part of that software, and it pulls the IP address where that was opened and signed. So
Right.
that's what it's going to boil down to.
But there's
That's a good
also
point.
third-party verification. I use that every time I sign documents.
As far as how does that work?
I put a thing into my computer and I have to put a password in, and it's a third-party verification of the electronic signature.
Got it. So it's an excellent point, and I want to spend just a few minutes on that. And I feel like we're probably going to spend a little bit too long on it, but I think it's probably one of the most important things.
It is very important.
We can talk about on the hour. So if you can think about it, since we're rolling into a break, what are some of the common, and it could be even accidental misrepresentation, right? What are some of the common misrepresentations you can see really would trip you up when an insurance company should be paying a claim, but maybe they're able to get out based on a mistake
Good
on the
question.
application. So we'll think about that as we roll into the break, and we'll talk about it, and then we'll run into some things to watch out for. We have a lot of stuff to cover this
There's
hour.
Latin on here too.
There is.
And
I had to go nerd on it.
yeah, you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. Our author number, in case you need Erin, 813-377-2775. She's awesome. If you have a question, she can answer it. 813-377-2775. We'll be back right after this break.
Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. Leo Cannyn with Beryl Engineering and Inspection. Adam
Katrina
Talley with
Meanwhile.
Talley Insurance.
Get to your own.
Katrina with just wanted to
That's
jump
me.
in.
Yeah.
And then we also have Erin Donovan with Danahay and Murray here to talk some Latin.
Danahay or Danahy?
It's Danahy.
Danahy.
But they're not the first person that's made that mistake.
As long as you're calling them, it's fine, right?
So let's talk about the application, because I think that's important. And then maybe in a minute you can chime in on how do you go back and kind of re-review that application. But what are some of the mistakes that you see that are holding you up when you're going back trying to help an insured?
Well, it's things that you wouldn't even think about, y'all. And I'm from Kentucky, so if I y'all or something like that, just bear with me. But
She's so cute. We have all kinds of accents this morning.
we do. So there's certain dog breeds. You have to disclose if you have certain dog breeds like pit bulls or chows or sometimes.
Or corgis.
Corgis.
So let me
Not
ask
usually corgis.
what happens if you do your app and then you meet somebody like Selena and you adopt a dog that's got some of these aggressive breeds? What happens if that changes after you do your application?
Well,
Like, who should I be
I was
asking?
looking at Adam for that.
Well,
one.
okay, I mean,
You should technically update your carrier on those things. That's what you're
it says it in
supposed to
like
do.
that 80-page packet that you get every year that lawyers read.
Well, but not everybody knows to do that,
Yeah.
and most people don't do that.
Exactly.
So I would just consider reviewing everything every year when you renew your coverage and make sure you're getting all the coverage that you need. Another misrepresentation that I've seen is tax liens. They didn't disclose that they had an outstanding tax lien. They didn't disclose that they had a pool. They didn't disclose that they had a fireplace. Different things like that can impact the amount you pay for your premium.
So
and can
tax
impact whether
liens,
you're covered.
felonies, that affects their coverage in the end if
It
they've got to
can.
make a claim?
It
It's
can.
one of those questions I was saying that they ask, and it's it's right on there. Have you had any insurance fraud or arson?
Well, I mean, that makes sense, but
It makes sense, but
Tax liens make sense. Anything that you're upside down in your house and you could lose your house, that's where claims come from.
liens, repossessions. Yeah.
It's technically supposed to be anything that would be material to their acceptance of the risk, kind of like Leo
Yeah.
was
Right.
just alluding to. So if you have you're upside down on a tax lien, or you're not financially fit to pay for the insurance, things like that. And it's unfortunate in Florida, but if they find out something about you lying on your application or you making a misrepresentation that'd be material, it can cause your policy to become void ab initio. They'll return your premiums, and then you don't have coverage. And that's why it's so important. I mean, I cannot stress y'all enough how many times I've seen these issues, and they're very difficult to overcome in the courts, because it's not like a claim denial where you can fight a claim denial based on a second opinion. It's void ab initio. There's your Latin. And that means it's the policy was not in existence to begin with, and that's why they return your premiums. But a lot of people
they're saying
come to
basically
me-
they're retracting it.
Yeah.
That's a
Now,
basic.
Wow.
now, question
Yes.
for you: when they do that, do they return like all the premiums from all the policy periods, or just the current one?
It just depends on the situation and how far back the loss was and
Interesting.
all of that. But I mean, technically, they should return all of them.
I would think they should
I
return
mean,
all of
legally,
it.
I would argue that they should return all of them. And unfortunately for you, I would say, was this an agent issue?
No, I mean, that's that would be my
where they
first
would go,
thing too.
'cause
Have
it's
you
hard to
gotten
get coverage.
Have you gotten these overturned?
No, unfortunately, the one that I actually dealt with it, and I usually like to pound my chest about my wins, but I will admit that we lost a case once because of a situation where the insured had a rental policy, and or pardon me, the insured had a homeowner's policy, but she was actually renting. And so even though they adjusted the claim, they went back and found out at her deposition that she had been renting the property the whole time.
That's like one of the most common things that I think we see.
It happens.
People maybe live in a home as a primary residence, and then the home no longer suits their needs, and they don't want to sell it. They want to rent it for whatever reason or another, and they don't update their insurance carrier that it's now a rental.
Well, and honestly, there's no need to, because, there's no need to want to keep that policy, because half the time when you're rewriting it to a DP3, which would be that rental property policy, it's less money anyway. So you could be saving money. I mean, if you keep your homeowners in policy, you're insuring contents that aren't yours. I
think it's one of the things they just don't think about it.
Yeah.
They just don't think about it.
I think that's what happened to that insured, and I think at one point it had been her property, and then she rented it to somebody she knew, somebody in the family, and so just to warn you guys out there, those things do happen, and they are difficult to get overturned, because in Florida you can't create coverage through waiver. And estoppel, which waiver is a concept where, if the insurance company acts like you're covered, you should be covered. Well, it doesn't work if you weren't covered in the beginning. So unfortunately, that's some of the bad law that's out there in Florida. But there are also some good laws in Florida with regards to insurance as well.
One of the things we talked about before, and I know, Leo, you talked all about this in extensive detail when Irma was rolling through about what you did. Pat, George, and I are like, I don't know, we're on a cruise. We didn't do none of that. But basically, you took a lot of pictures of the interior, the exterior of your home.
Yeah, I do that every year.
And so you just take pictures, video the inside, or you getting serial numbers?
Put it in the cloud.
I
talked about this for the hurricane preparedness.
I don't do video because I guess the insurance people and the lawyers are lazy when it comes to video, and they won't actually look at it. They want to see actual still photos. So I take about 400 photos a year on July 1.
So, I mean, that's important.
Up.
And then a little chime in, Adam, and you can talk about this as well, but make sure you have replacement so that they're not trying to replace your $3,000 TV with a $200 TV.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Those things are important. And the best coverage is an HO3, which is the homeowners, like we talked about. If you have rental, you need to make sure you get a DP3, have the proper coverage if you rent. Make sure you have additional living expense coverage. Make sure you have
We talked
law and
about
ordinance,
this.
We need to
all that
talk
stuff.
about law and ordinance. It is my favorite edition writer, because what ends up happening is when you're filing a claim, that's where all the extra stuff comes in. If you, let's say you have a house fire and you have an old electrical panel, they're only going to replace that panel. But if you have law and ordinance, you have to bring that panel up to current code. You have to rewire the house. You have to upgrade your outlets in the bathrooms and the kitchens.
Do I have law and ordinance on my building, Adam?
On your building?
This is a new building, so you probably... The other things we see law and ordinance a lot on is a roof. City of Tampa, let's say you're replacing your roof. They want to see those hurricane straps at all your trusses. That's not part of a normal roof replacement. So that's where law and ordinance kicks in. So that's my favorite clause right there, is law and ordinance.
And there's a push for it as far as windows lately as well. They make windows to withstand hurricanes a lot better now. So that's something that can come into play on the law and ordinance as well.
It's my favorite one.
It's so important to talk about having these coverages. Are you in a sinkhole prone area? Are you in a hurricane prone area? Are you in a flood zone? And those are the questions you need to be asking Adam and his company when you're applying for coverage, because that's half the battle, is did I even get the right coverage before hurricane season?
So for those three questions, they would just be, do you live in Florida?
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Flood zone, hurricane, and sinkhole. Are you in Florida?
So I have a question for you, because you just mentioned flood, and we're talking about hurricane and all that other stuff. Do you have you seen any difficulty on your end when it is one of those catastrophic events, and now you have a flood policy and obviously a wind policy, and it looks like there's damage from both? Is that something you guys hop in on as well?
It is. I just talked to a friend of mine about a claim in the Panhandle yesterday, Michael. And one of the things that's coming into play on those claims is who came first, the wind or the flood?
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
So, and why is that? Well, the insurance company for the wind policies want to blame it on flood, And of course, the flood policy, people want to blame it on the wind. But you want to try to get as much as you can covered by wind. And that's because those are broader and better policies. And then you don't have to deal with FEMA. I can't even get attorney's fees back if I'm dealing with FEMA.
Wow.
It's an animal that really you don't want to have to deal with. So it's important to talk to meteorologists and experts to figure out what happened. Is there anybody that has video footage with timing at the bottom?
So we should literally video this whole thing, this whole storm happening.
Well, now you have to video your property before the storm. Now you have to video during.
After the storm.
I mean, in an ideal world, yes, but nobody has the time to actually do that.
So basically, they're up in the Panhandle. They're doing scour effect versus wind effect. Scour is the act of water coming in and pulling.
So it's surge. A lot of it's surge.
Scour.
Interesting.
And so, but it's very interesting because it's one of those things where that's the importance of getting experts involved. If you get your claim back, your claim decision back, and you're going, wait a minute, my house has been condemned, but they're only paying $17,000 in coverage. Probably time to call either Leo or an attorney,
Absolutely.
or a public adjuster, and start asking questions.
And that's the little seed that I want to plant right now. Before you actually get that offer of $17,000 and your house is condemned, it makes sense to talk to an attorney before you file the claim, so you can do a little bit of due diligence, ask some questions, and make sure that you set yourself up to succeed. Because in many cases and many times, you get your attorney's fees paid by the insurance company.
That's true, and that's something that we can talk about in a minute, is the Florida attorney fee statute, which we are so fortunate to have. And I can say that because I've practiced in states that don't
5 seconds.
have the attorney fee statute.
We'll be right back after the break.
Stick
Tampa
around.
Home Talk. Stick around. Well, good morning. Welcome back. This is Tampa Home Talk. Leo Cannyn here with an exciting agenda. We're still in the first section before the claim.
It's a lot to talk
We
about.
could have done 2 hours on this. I have tons of questions for her. So
Well, fire
we could have
away.
done
Hurry up.
We could have done
Let's
2
just
hours.
Ready and fire.
focus here. This is like a whole quarter's worth of shows here. So let's just focus on before the claim.
Well, y'all leave it up to a lawyer. I'm going to be too wordy. I mean, what do y'all want?
Well, what's your questions, Adam?
No, we're going through it. We're going through it. It's
Oh, no,
good.
I thought you said you had specific
You
questions.
said you had questions.
You did.
2 hours of content with the questions.
When we were on, when we went to break, we talked about the. So some of our carriers now are doing flood coverage as an endorsement on your homeowner's policy,
Which is
so
awesome.
Instead of
So
having
like a
two
writer.
separate carriers for your flood and for your, for your property. It's one carrier, and that way, if you do get in that claim situation like Michael, where you have wind and flood damage, it's one carrier paying the claim. They're not going to fight each other. They're just going to write you the check, hopefully. If not, you're going to call.
Unless they do
gonna call
void
her.
ab initio. I can't talk Latin.
Nitio?
That's a valiant attempt to use Latin there, Leo. But
Sorry.
Valiant, very valiant,
But I mean, I have this problem on my just normal insurance policies. One lapses in July, one lapses in October, one lapses in January. If I had one carrier, I could have one payment date. That would be awesome.
See, the thing with that is, though, I mean, even when we put you with the same carrier, right? I could write all. Let's say you have 10 rental properties. I could write all 10 with the same carrier, and we could have them all be on the same date. And we have 17 different homeowners carriers. But even if I put you all with one, the billing is you'd still get 10 bills on the same day instead
would you
of
want
one
that?
bill. They're just not as sophisticated as you'd want them to be yet.
I would
That's
want
just
10
how it
bills on
is.
the same day.
I know
It doesn't sound like fun.
Listen, I had to deal with a carrier on my own policy for auto, and this is a big national carrier. It's a $1 billion company, and yet their policy system and their billing system are two separate systems. So they'll still charge you on the billing even though the policy was canceled. And trust me, we had a long conversation about that one.
No, I think I know that carrier. I had that same problem.
We'll talk about it maybe. I don't know.
Or not on the air.
Yeah. But anyways,
I have a couple guesses, but I'll talk to y'all about that off the air as well.
But going back to the whole, that's just insane. Going back to your story that you shared, the guy's house is a total loss. It's been condemned, and the insurance companies are having what came first, the chicken or the egg conversation. You got to be kidding me, right? The title surge or the wind.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And so that's why law firms like Danahy and Murray exist, because we don't want to fight the claims. We want the claims to be paid, but sometimes we're a necessary evil. And so we fight claims where it's either been denied or undervalued, and we get second opinions like that. So yeah, technically they've paid coverage on that loss, that Michael loss I was just telling y'all about, but what's he going to do with 17 grand? He's got to rebuild the property. And the funny one about that is there's a engineer that even has deemed the property unsafe, hired by them.
Wow.
So that's just an example of some of the ridiculous things that we'll see. Now, some carriers do it right, and some people on the insurance side do it right. I'm pleased to hear that Adam actually asks his insureds the questions that you're supposed to ask, because some agents are not that thorough, and then their insured is stuck in a position where there's a mistake on the application they can't overcome.
I would never want an E&O claim, so that's the backup to the backup, and nobody wants that. So that's
you should be thorough, right? That's where you guys are bringing the most value, really, is at the time of the application to try to figure out what kind of coverage they need to make sure it's set up properly.
Well, and like I said, I like to go line by line through the coverages and explain what they are, because the worst thing that can happen is somebody gets that policy, maybe somebody say, oh yeah, just get the insurance, we got to close, whatever, and then they get that policy, they stuff it in their drawer, they don't think about it for 5 years, and then something happens, and that's where the issue
arise. And there's a lot of that happens when you're in the middle of a real estate transaction. There's a lot of things trying to happen, and trying to make deadlines and closing dates, because those are contractually binding dates, that we have to fulfill. So it's just a lot of pressure from all areas, but it's important to spend a few minutes on this. And even if you do close already, or, if you own a property now and you have insurance, call your insurance carrier. Say, hey, can we run through the questions on the application? I don't even remember what I put down. I just want to know what it says on there and that I'm covered.
And you're not married to that carrier either, right? You don't have to wait the full year to switch around. You can always switch midterm if you're not happy or anything like that.
And that's a good point.
So tell me about the flood, or the insurance coverage with the flood rider, essentially, or endorsement. Like that seems like it would be substantially better. Do you know what that looks like in terms of
as far as coverage is concerned? So like for your policy, for example, right? Let's use that one. And we wrote it with security first. So for anybody else that's out there.
Why would you look at the camera when you said that?
Well,
just in case.
We wrote it with security first.
Well, we got our Facebook people that can only hear if we're really projecting that way. So you got to try to help them out a little bit. But basically, and if you read the language that's in there, it says we cover, their forms are to be equal to or broader than what the NFIP provides.
Which is not that amazing, right?
No, but for them, they'll give you, replacement cost on contents, which you can't get through the NFIP. I mean, they'll give you a lot of different things on there that, the NFIP is not going to do. And then in your case, the policy basically only equated to about $100 worth of premium versus writing a standalone policy. Even if your house was built, 3 feet above the floodplain, it still would have been $700-800.
That's incredible, really.
It's a huge savings as well. So better coverage, less money. I mean, it's a win-win.
So I got a curious question, because we see all sorts of stuff, right? Like, what happens if you have a husband and a wife, and I know they ask all these questions on the application, but what if one of them that's not even on it, say the husband has a judgment, but the wife doesn't? Is that going to impact the insurance at all?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if you have an answer to that.
Well, I've dealt with these issues in a little bit different context. One time I had a teenage boy burn down the family home. Even though he wasn't on the mortgage, he wasn't on the deed, and he wasn't a named insured.
Right.
Okay? So the court ultimately found in my favor that, well, what if it had been a 5-year-old kid playing with matches?
So how are they trying to fight that? I don't understand.
They said that they had violated the intentional act provision in the policy by burning down the house on purpose, because the teenager had actually burned the house down on purpose in a fit of rage. So, but what I was trying to argue was the kid wasn't doing anything fraudulent or anything criminal. He went into a rage, and that shouldn't affect his parent's ability to cover. So it kind of depends on your jurisdiction, the policy language, and stuff like that. But the insurance company, just in the interest of full disclosure, is appealing that decision. But basically, I attacked the intentional loss provision and said it wasn't in concert with, it was in Missouri law. And the judge agreed. And part of the reason that he agreed with me was the kid wasn't going to get a financial interest from having burnt down the house.
Right.
And the parents happened to be on vacation in Florida when it happened.
Interesting.
So
At this point, that he'll be looking at a place to live, right? When they get that
well,
house
probably. So it's just very interesting because it kind of depends on what your policy says. I know the mortgagee, even in the first party context, has a lot of rights, and a lot of people have that New York mortgagee clause that says basically, the mortgagee will be basically controls where, if there's a settlement payment, the mortgagee is going to be on the check, stuff like that. So we do see lots of instances where somebody that's not a named insured may still affect the coverage. The mortgagee affects who's paid coverage. And then as far as the situation where the policy was in the wife's name, but then the husband had a judgment, the insurance company could come back and say, well, he's on the mortgage, he's on the deed.
Right.
Well, what if he's not on it?
But if he's not on any of that, there might be some way around it, but it's
Yeah,
still...
and I would think it depends on how, like, each carrier even writes the policy language a little different, right? So they might cover kids up to a certain age or whatever and consider them named insureds, even though they're not,
Well, and
or
there's
consider them
definitional
insureds, not named
if they
insureds,
live
but-
under the same roof. So that's where you would run into an issue probably is they would argue like in that fire case, well, even though the guy wasn't a named insured, the teenage kid that burnt that place down, he's a definitional insured because he's a family member who lives under the roof, blah,
right.
blah, blah, blah.
And,
So
but you'll see some of them, well, under age of 25 or something like that.
So you're
it
supposed to
could be
list
anything.
who is living there?
No.
Oh.
Not necessarily. I mean, but we do have some carriers to where, regardless of if you're on the deed or you're on the mortgage or anything else like that, if you're married, they want both
Insureds on
both
there?
people on there as an applicant.
yeah, we
So
see
then
a
that
lot.
ties it in, and then whatever for one person would be the same as the other, and you just fall under whatever she was talking about with the being an applicant. And,
So how do they replace, like, for example, I have to ask because we just bought some, and my policy's about ready to renew. So I guess I got to add this stuff on. But if you have artwork, like, what happened? Like, is that considered under
there's a
replacement?
couple different ways. I mean, I'm sure every policy has sublimits, so I'm sure there's some sublimit on there for artwork, but you can always do scheduled personal property, which basically it's like its own policy just for that piece of art. It's like a rider, it's
What
an old
does
term
that
for
cost
it.
roughly?
Depends on what it is. So jewelry, for instance, that's probably the most common that we see. So most policies will limit your jewelries, watches, and furs to $1,500 or $2,500.
What?
Who
if you have
has jewelry that cheap?
I mean, I don't.
So if you have a very expensive ring or something like that, and I always tell people pick the most important one.
Listen,
you can go a little
I've
too
been
crazy
married
with it,
for
but-
over 20 years, and I think my wedding ring cost more than that back then, and
Yeah.
it's definitely worth more now.
So,
What
but you
about
can-
my fuzz?
But you can put it on there, and it gives you a lot. Honestly, it gives you more coverage depending on the carrier when you do that. And there's a $0 deductible.
When you do
and-
what? Add it as a
added
rider?
as scheduled personal property. And there's usually no deductible. And, so it's great, but it does cost money. So jewelry, for example, general rule of thumb with most of our carriers is it's $2 per 100 of coverage is the premium on that. So,
Okay.
for example, $10,000 ring, what's that? 100, so it'd be $200 to insure it
per year.
per year.
I mean, at some point, you got to go, would I pay
Is it
that
worth-
forever,
yeah.
or would I reinvest that money somewhere
Like
else?
that's why I always tell people: if you're really, really concerned, pick one, pick the most important one. Let's do that one. Let the others, just kind of take the risk because you can be overinsured and insured. I don't.
Man, that insurance stuff is a racket.
Well, we have a client up in St. Augustine that had, they used to coach figure skaters. And so they have all this really unique memorabilia.
Ooh.
And I don't think they had the scheduled coverage for that, but that's probably something they should have or could have.
But
done.
how do you put a
So-
value on memorabilia? That's
Well, that's
Yeah.
probably what you're talking about. Pick the one that's most important.
I'll go back to jewelry because that's the easiest and the most common. But the same thing would be for art. Either a recent bill of sale, like within the last couple of years, or an
30 seconds.
Appraisal.
because
Okay.
basically the bill of sale tells you what the market price would be because that's what you just paid for it.
So the
Got it.
Antique Roadshow comes in and looks at your memorabilia. And
that I don't know. I did get a request to insure a wine collection, and I was like, we can't do that because you're going to drink it. So
All right.
813-377-2775. That's 813-377-2775. When we come back, we'll talk about insuring my wine collection. Stay tuned.
Always fun, never boring.
You're gonna.
Back to Tampa Home Talk. This is Adam Talley with Talley Insurance, joined by Katrina Madewell
That's me with Keller Williams Realty.
and Leo Cannyn with Beryl Project Engineering and Inspections. And he got our video camera working, so he's also our audiovisual guy. And we have a very special guest today, Aaron Dunavant with Danahy and Murray, and they do insurance claim
Work?
Yes. So I
Insurance claim defense work.
well, right. So what I do is represent
defense
homeowners,
work.
business
Get an
owners,
acronym.
HOAs, condo associations, whatever, if they have a denied or undervalued insurance claim. And so one of the things I want to talk about is, since we have hurricane season coming upon us down the pike, just some important bullet points on things that you'll need to know when you make your claim. Know that, make sure you have everything covered, like we talked about last couple segments. The insurance company has 14 days per Florida statute to respond to your communication. So keep that in mind. They may ask for an inspection, a recorded statement, a second inspection for an engineer. So make sure you comply. I know that's not intuitive to just let people onto our property. And I'm from Kentucky, so I'm, you can picture me on the front porch.
They don't
Shotgun
come on our house around these
in
works.
hand, right?
Right. So, but make sure you comply with those things, because if you don't allow for an inspection or anything like that, then the insurance company could argue that they don't have to cover you because you prejudice them, you cause them to not be able to adjust the loss. Make sure you tell your insurance company as quickly as possible about your claim as well. This is extremely important, because even though under statute you've got some time, water losses, a lot of the policies have like a 14-day requirement.
So what happens if you're literally like on a cruise for a week or two and you don't get back? Then what?
Well, that's one reason that you might want to have someone checking on your house while you're gone. I definitely recommend that. But again, that's where you also want to get a competing expert opinion, because they may say, well, all of that damage, the insurance company may say that all of that water damage happened within 14 days. You can get an expert to come and overcome that if they're able to go back and look at everything relatively soon after you get back. One of the things we saw too is after Irma, a lot of people in the state of Florida were evacuated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they literally couldn't get back. I had somebody deny a claim for late notice. I'm like, he was mandatorily evacuated from his home. How? He couldn't even get to his house to make the claim. So we see that. Make sure you mitigate.
So many people were leaving the state. All the rental cars were they were getting them out of here as fast as they could to protect them. And many people, of course, because we were mandatory hurricane evacuation, were not coming in. So that's why, like, we went on this ship. It was literally a 3,000 passenger ship, about 900 guests on it.
That's insane.
It was awesome. But here's the thing, like, and so just in my mind, and Pat was on the cruise, so he remembers, but I was thinking, okay, we were supposed to go to Cuba and come back. We ended up having to leave Cuba early, went to Cozumel, which wasn't on the itinerary. And when we already were starting to head back, the Port of Tampa was still closed. So the captain literally said,
Fun day at sea.
well, the Port of Tampa's closed. We're going to slowly make our way back, but we have a berth open in Port Canaveral. So if for some reason the Port of Tampa is still not open, we're going to take you guys to Port Canaveral, and you can either get off or you can stay on the ship till we take you back to Tampa. So think about how long that might be to sail, from Cuba to Cozumel, around Florida to Port Canaveral, around Florida again to
So
Tampa.
long as the drink package is still, still
No, you have
working.
to, they charge us for the extra days. We literally got charged.
I was
They
going to
got-
ask if they charge you or did it for free.
We had it, and we had to pay
So-
for the extra days.
No,
I
that
think
day
they
is-
should
Oh my
include
gosh.
it.
I mean, they're already a third capacity. They need to make up money however
That's
they
what I
can.
was
I was
thinking,
going to say
yeah.
maybe that's why they did that. But another, just to go back to some of the time frames. So that's an important point that you make, though, Katrina, is you might want to have someone checking on your house, even if it's just once every few days, because you don't know if a pipe is going to burst. I mean,
but you have if you're on a ship, you literally have no cell phone coverage.
so you wouldn't know. Yeah, no, it's
that person would
insane.
just be there. Well,
I personally think that
Well, they can
14-day
turn the
thing's
water
a little
off.
bit impractical
It
for
is.
real life situations.
They can
but
turn the water off. Like I walked in, your toilet's exploded and it's leaking everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn this water main off.
But I would think, if you get back and you call them immediately upon your awareness of this, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a.
That could be argued, surely, right?
Yeah,
You're an
right?
attorney.
Like, I would
you
think,
have to
like,
say yes to that.
I would definitely just recommend reporting it the second
Right.
you get back, and then they'll send out. They should, if they're a good carrier, they'll send out a dry out company. You can mitigate right away that way.
Well, and
So-
how are you supposed to know if something's like it? I could be living in my house and there could be like a small leak behind the wall that I mean, am I supposed to cut into the wall all the time? I would think, if they could argue one way, I would think that it should be like when you first notice it.
It's typically it will be date of discovery, and
Perfect.
we just see the argument from the other side because
Oh,
we're,
yeah.
we're on the tough claims, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's when we get hired.
So let me ask you an imperative question. When you're rolling down this and you've got a claim of whatever sort or another, when is it too late to actually hire an attorney? Like, when is it too late? Like, you've already done a lot of the damage trying to do this on your own. When is it too late?
That's a good question. So in Florida, the statute gives you 3 years to report a hurricane loss from the date it made landfall. Okay. And then another really important date to keep in mind is you only have 5 years from the date of loss to file a lawsuit for breach of contract. So 5 years may seem like a long time, but I don't really feel comfortable filing a lawsuit, and neither does my law firm, until I've had an expert opinion, at least review everything. And I have at least a verbal. So,
That
so
would be
those
Leo.
are, what's that?
That would be Leo.
That would be Leo. And there's plenty of, situations where somebody doesn't notice. I've had people not notice their Irma damage until early 2019 because maybe the leaking doesn't manifest into the home.
Right.
And so I did.
Yeah,
I got
let's face it, people are not walking around on their roof or in their attic. Like,
No,
they're
of
just
course not. In fact, that insured that I was just mentioning had looked at his front yard after Irma and said, "Oh, good, there's not shingles sprinkled out all over my front yard.
Good
I'm
to go,"
good."
right? Yeah.
Goes back inside and goes about his business. So another important deadline for you guys to keep in mind is your insurance company has 90 days to make a claim decision. So they have to either pay or deny the claim within 90 days. Or at the very least, they need to tell you why it is taking longer than that. Did they have to hire an engineer? Did they do this? Did they do that?
And can they file an extension on that or no?
Well, it's not technically an extension, but if they say, they send you correspondence on the 90th day that says, we are still evaluating, our engineers have all of the information, yada, yada. But
And
it
if they
becomes
don't,
an issue.
Like, what's the ramification if they don't?
It's part of the bad faith statutes
Okay.
if they don't make the decision on time. So you can always argue it.
That's where Aaron will go get them. I'm just saying.
Some civil remedy notice.
All right, so you're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We've had an exciting 2 hours with you that has flown by faster
It
than
has.
we can blink.
Always does. We got to bring her back. That was
We
fun.
do. She is going to be back.
Thank
She's going to be a
you.
regular on the show, so we'll have her back at least in a couple months, maybe sooner, depending on
30
what
seconds.
this weather does.
Yeah.
Our off-air number, 813-377-2775. Call or text, 813-377-2775. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Remember, love where you live, or we're going to fix it with our 90-day Love Where You Live guarantee. Welcome
Thank you
home.
for having me.
Have a great
Thanks
week,
for coming.
everybody.